Okay, this is some of the technology I worked on, computers and so on. I worked over through the years. It's like the first job I had at Boster Supply Company. They had an ancient bookkeeping machine. It was already really old at the time, and so there was that, and of course, calculators. It's like I had calculators. Worked on a calculator the entire entire accounting career, and I still have a calculator, with the tape and stuff, but I haven't been using it. It's like for a number of years on my desk at home, my office desk at home had a calculator, and actually we learned how to do 10 key, by touch when I went to the business college, South Bay Business College on Hawthorne Boulevard. Um, anyway, it's like over the years, like there were different types of computers. I remember working on a Compaq. There was a Northstar, something called Northstar, and that was at Bay Central Lumber. They had a Northstar, and somebody made fun of it one time. Of course, bookkeeping machines. There was also when I was working for Apex, which was a computer company. They had the the computer was called an Altos. They had Altos computers, which were somewhat common back then at that time frame. That was back in the 80s, late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. And The software, by the way, was always sucky. The accounting software was always really bad, not made by anybody that knew anything about accounting. There was, let's see, and then Macintosh. I worked on the first Apple computer, Macintosh, back in probably the late 80s. At one company, it was a temporary job. It was in the Valley, and it's like it's like I didn't, like I said, didn't stay there and stuff. But it was kind of interesting. I kind of liked the Macintosh computers. It's like I was also going to bring up that the you know, originally, when I was working at Apex, their software was Thoroughbred, and it wasn't very good, and wasn't written very well. And then they went to something called Add-on. It was called Add-on, and I think they renamed it Mass 90. And Mass 90 was good Add-on, and then when it became Mass 92 also, but that was actually really good software. Finally somebody knew what they were doing when it came to accounting software, because the other stuff tended to be riddled with bugs and stuff. Uh, and then there were a number of generic computers. When I was working at not Apex, but yeah, it's like when I was working for registration control systems, they had some kind of generic computers and stuff. And then, and the software was just, it wasn't good. And actually, I changed over. When I was there, like I did in a lot of companies, I switched their accounting software to something good. So that made sense. And then also I was going to talk about Lotus 123. Of course now it's like it's long gone, and people just use Microsoft Excel instead. But as far as a spreadsheet goes, it was actually a decent spreadsheet. And then there was also something I don't have it here in my notes, but there was something called Word Perfect. It's like, and actually that was pretty good too. That's gone. And it's like it's just Word. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of that, and it's like also there was also I used ADP at a number of the companies. The ADP, they do payroll. They're still around, still doing payroll. They were really good. They've always been good, and I imagine they're still good, and good service, especially if you have a smaller company and so on. So I on and off through the years I used ADP for payroll and stuff instead of doing it, because they did everything. They did the taxes and everything. So it was just easy. It was worth paying them to do all of that. In the beginning, I remember I used to call in. We used to figure it out, and then I used to have to call it in, and and then you go over with a clerk, somebody on the other, like who was getting paid, how many hours and stuff, and then there was like a subtotal, and you made sure the subtotals were correct and everything, and then the totals were correct. I'm sure now it's all done online, but that was kind of interesting. And I think that's about it. It's like, it was just an interesting the history, dealing with computers, and going from, I think I said in another video that I did a lot of like conversions over to from manual accounting software to computer software to computers, and then also from computer, like an older computer system to a newer computer system. So it's interesting that I lived through that time of history, like when we were doing all of that, and so much better than trying to do books manually. Although, I remember somebody saying it kind of took the fun out of accounting, when they did that. It's like you don't have a manual general ledger or anything anymore. It's like, and it kind of took the fun out of it. And it's like, kind of agree with that. It did. It did.